Alrighty, so this week what we're going to do is finally add the interactive components. Believe it or not, this is actually probably going to be way faster and way easier than the previous 2 weeks. You'll see it's actually pretty straightforward and, like I said, not as complicated as you might think because there's a lot of help here. You may have noticed I got a new webcam, which to some extent I'm kind of regretting because you can see me better now. So, like, it's not as good. So it's also much more wide. I mean, look how wide that is. It's wider than my arm. So anyway, let's get to it and we will do it. Stick to it. Okay, so first off, what we're going to do is this. I need to take my panels and what I'm going to, literally all we're going to do is we're just going to make a play button. We're going to make the timeline play and we're going to make it stop. And that's the whole thing. So inevitably, what I'm trying to do here is I want this this whole thing to play across. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is we're going to take these panels here, right? So I got these 3 panels. I'm going to combine them all as one panel, and then from there we'll just animate it just sliding across the screen. Okay, so looking at these though, you can see this one's kind of inside of there, and this one is also a little bit in there. So I'm going to grab these 2 and just move them over with my arrow key. So I just have the select tool and just push them over so it's not overlapping there. And then this one, oops, okay, click off and then click just this one. And then I'm use my arrow keys again, and oh, that one is as far over as it's supposed to be. But notice that it is above this one. Now, because these are all on the same layer, looks like I went a little too far, actually. Let me go back a little. I don't want to have any gaps. Okay. So, because this one, you can see the sky's over top of it. But a real easy thing we can do is I can select this. And if you have multiple elements on a layer, all you got to, I actually left this on purpose so you can see this. All you got to do is the same thing you could do in Illustrator. You just go to Modify, Arrange, and you can send backwards. You can send forwards, meaning it'll move it up and below. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and send it all the way to the back. And now this guy's behind the other panel. So when we get to this panel, you won't see his butt here, right? Because I don't think we really want to do that. All right. So in order to animate these sliding across, they actually have to all be combined as one big symbol. So I'm literally just going to grab all these symbols and nest them into another symbol. So I'm going to select them all. I'm going to hit F8 or go to Modify, Convert to Symbol. Go ahead, just make sure it's a movie clip. And we're just going to call it all panels _ MC. Okay. And so where's my, there it is. Okay. So now you can see they all move as one big piece. Okay. And now I can animate them and slide them across. I can still get to the other ones. If I double click on it and get inside of it, you'll see that we have our individual panels inside of, if it'll let me, inside of each one of these. Okay. So no big deal there. All right. So I'm just going to go back out here to all panels. And I'm just going to animate this sliding across. So I'm going to have it take 1 second in between. So, so to go from first panel to second panel, that's going to go from here to 1 second. So that'll get me to panel 2. And then to get from panel 2 to panel 3 will take me 2 seconds. And then when I click the next, I'm just going to have it snap back to here. So really we only need to go to 2 seconds. So I'm going to go on this and I'm going to hit F5, or you can right click and go insert frame. Okay, so now we have a span that's crossing. Now it holds this for that long, but I need to add the motion tween. So I'm just going to right click and create motion tween. Good. And now what we're going to do is we're just going to go right to 1 second, and I'm just going to hold shift as I pull this across, and I'm just going to slide. I'm just holding shift so it doesn't move up and down. You could do it without it. So now, and make sure that this is centered in this, in our stage here. Okay. So now when it goes from 1 or 0 to 1, and then from 1 to 2, I want it to go to this one. And I'm just going to make sure that we put it right on the stage. I think it's right there. Control plus. Let's see, are you good? Obviously the goal is to make it just this picture and none of the other ones and what have you. So I think we're good. Okay. So now if you go to play this, it's literally just going to go wah, 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 wah. It's going to go like that nonstop. We're going to fix that in a second, but the other thing I need to have, so that's my panels, right? I already have panels. I need to make a button that when I click, that's my next button. And this is what we're going to be doing kind of for the whole thing. Except we're going to make a button specifically just to click to go next. So I'm just going to make a new layer, and we'll just call it next button. Okay, so that's going to be our next button, and I'm going to draw it up here. So honestly, for this is one of those things where you can make your button however you want. I'm just going to show you how to make this. I'm just going to make this button, but if you want to do a different graphic or something, go for it. It really doesn't matter. So I'm going to start with, I'm going to use a rectangle, and for my fill, click on my fill color. Someday it'll come. Here we go. And I'm just going to sample my orange and the stroke. And let's just go ahead and make it like, I don't know, 4. I think it should be thick. Okay, so I have that, and I'm just going to draw a rectangle. And I'm going to Control plus, hold spacebar, and this will be my next button. So I just need to make it like an arrow, right? So I'm just going to click on my line tool here, and I am going to cut across. I'm going to hold shift so it stays straight. And then I'm going to try and guesstimate roughly where half is. I could put the snapping on, but I don't really want to do that. Okay. Good. Now I am going to hit V for the select tool. I'm going to click on this one, delete it, and I'm going to pull this straight across. Unfortunately, shift doesn't really seem to do much, right? So you can kind of see it's kind of like an arrow, right? It's a little bit off, but and then once I do that, I can get rid of that guy. It's a little weird, but anyway, so like that. And now I need the top and bottom part. I'm going to go ahead and delete this and delete this. I'm going to grab this. I'm going to pull it up and back like so and try to keep it straight and up and back. And we're just trying to guesstimate. Now I can go ahead and click this inside piece and then just further adjust this. And we have an arrow. It's not perfect. You know, if I was really being hardcore, I would do it. You know, I'd be more particular, but for our purposes, I think it's good enough. Okay. So next, what I want to do is I need to actually write the word next. So I'm just going to go ahead and select the text tool. I'm going to make my color Le Black. And I'm using Comic Sans and bold, and we'll just start with 24. And I'm just going to go ahead and click and write. I'm just going to use all caps. Next. I'm going to click off on the regular. Actually, I need this guy. And I'm just going to go ahead and scale this so that it fits in there. I'm holding shift as I scale it so it stays proportionate. And good. Okay. So now we've made this graphic. It's literally just a graphic, though. It's sitting on top. Let's lock this too. I'm going to lock my panel so I don't accidentally select them. That way I can click and drag over it. Okay. So now we've got this graphic here, but I need to make it into a symbol. Okay. So we're just going to go ahead and do modify, convert to symbol. And this time, instead of doing a movie clip or a graphic, we're actually going to use the button. And you'll see how the button is different. So I'm just going to go ahead and call this next underscore BTN. BTN obviously for button. And yep, like that. Now, good. So now we got this button. It doesn't look like anything special currently, but what I want to do is this. I'm going to double click on it. And now you're going to see that its timeline is different. You'll notice that, I can't drag it across, but it's got up, over, down, and hit. So this is why this one's different than the other ones. It actually has specific things set up for it being a button. Now, if you've ever done web design or any other kind of UI design, you'll know that basically these represent different mouse positions. So up is its default. This is what it normally looks like. That's what it looks like when you're not doing anything. Over means when the mouse hovers, if you're familiar with web design, hovers over the graphic. What is it going to look like? What is it going to do? What is it when you're in hover? What is the state? Okay, so these can be any number of things. We're only going to be setting it up for just graphically, but you can have, like, when you hover, it actually does a function. Like, I could put a script on that. But I'm just going to have it what it looks like over that. And then down is when you click on it. When you hold it down, what does it look like? And hit is actually what is the button? Like, what part of it is the button? So if I took this whole graphic and put on hit, that means it would be the whole graphic. So if you hover over it, it'll turn to a little finger, and any part of the graphic would be button. But if I wanted it to just be like just the word, if I put just the word on there, that's how it would show up. So for instance, let's say you had a character and you want to be like when you click their face, that's the button, but you have the whole character as the graphic. You could just do a circle around the face and put that on hit. And only when you click on the hit is it actually going to make you know, that it actually is the button. Okay, so yeah, so that's what it is. If you don't put anything on there, it's by default the whole graphic. So we're actually not gonna use that at all for any of this, but that just so you know what it is. All right. So on over, I'm just gonna go ahead and hit F6. So that's just gonna make a new keyframe and duplicate the previous frame. And I'm just gonna change the look of it. So on over, what I'm gonna do is I'm going to I got it, good, okay. I'm gonna double click on my outline here, and I'm just gonna make it white. And then on the next text, I'm just going to go ahead and also make that white, like so. And then we'll take the orange, and I'm just going to make it a little bit darker. Click here, and I'm just going to drag this down a little bit, make it a little bit darker, right? So when you hover over it, it's just going to kind of invert almost, right? And then on down, I'll go ahead and I will hit F6 again. And we're just going to kind of do the opposite. I'm going to take this, and I'm going to make it, click on that, and I'll make it a little bit brighter than it normally would be. Okay. And then on the button here, go ahead and click on that, and we will make it like, I don't know, darkish gray. And I'm just click on this and also make it a darkish gray. Okay. So when you click, it's going to look like that. So on up, regular, that's what it normally looks like. When you hover, that's what it's going to look like. And when you hit, that's what it's going to look like. Okay. So I'm going to back up. Now watch, just so you can kind of see. It might take a second for it to compress here. I just want you to see what it looks like so you get an idea of what's happening. Come on, buddy. My computer is very slow. Okay. Try not to preview too much just because I don't want to. One over here. Okay. So it's going to play constantly. Just be prepared for that. You're going to see the thing constantly sliding. But
why does everybody?
You can see when I hover over it, right? Let me just.
Why does everybody?
We don't need that. When I hover over it, and then when I click, it does that. So that's basically the idea of it. All right. Okay. So that's what makes a button special. All right. So now we have all the things that we need. Okay. So what we need to do now is we need to make code. I need to have a code that's going to tell the timeline to not play, stop on this frame. And then I need to have this button that when you click on it, it says play. And so the code will say stop. I click on the button, it'll say play. And then I need to put another bit of code that says stop here. And then this always just says play. So if I click on it, it will play again. And then I need another bit of code that's going to say stop here. And again, if I click on it, then it will play. And since it's a loop, it'll start back in the beginning. It's actually really simple when you think about it, right? So we can write this manually, or we can use code snippets, and they're already built in, and it's pretty easy. So what I want you to do is go to Window. You can hit F9, or you go to Actions. So they still call it Actions. I feel like it should be called scripting or something, because I think it's called Actions because this action script was the native language, but they added JavaScript to this. So we can actually, and you might have noticed, obviously it exports out JavaScript. So this project, we're doing web stuff. The previous one we did a video. This one we're going to do web. And then the next one we're actually going to make interactive content. So anyway, so we can just start typing in here. But I have a feeling you probably don't feel super great about doing that. So what we're going to do is if you click on this button here, this is the code snippets. And you can see this is very important because I've seen people screw this up. It has ActionScript and it has HTML5 canvas. There's two sections. We're going to do ActionScript in the next lab series. This one, we're doing Canvas. Okay, so if you look on the top, you can see this is Canvas. You have to make sure that you set your project up initially in one of those two categories. It is possible, if you do screw it up, that you can go to File and now revert. Where is it? Somewhere in here. Oh, convert to. And then, like, so if I want to convert my project to ActionScript, it will do that, and vice versa. If I was in ActionScript, I convert it to Canvas. But it doesn't actually do anything. All it does is change this. But if you have any code, it's gone. So if you wrote any code, it's gone. I'm not sure how it reacts to animations. I think they'll mostly be okay. But if, for instance, you're in ActionScript and you use parenting and you switch over to Canvas, that obviously doesn't support it. So I'm assuming that would be gone. I don't know how it would handle it. So you don't want to do that. But if worst comes to worst, and you made your graphics, you needed like, oh crap, I made the wrong thing. you can at least do it there. So, I mean, that's something. Anyway, we are doing HTML5 canvas. We're doing web. HTML is the web language. Okay, so we're going to open that up. And you can see they, again, are in sections here. So there's different little, basically what these are, they're just pre-made little bits of code that will dynamically change to what you select and what have you, that will automatically kind of write themselves. So we don't actually have to write hardly anything. We're worried about, everything we're doing is timeline navigation, right? So, because we're just trying to play and stuff like that. So I'm just going to go ahead and open up that one, and you can see, stop at this frame. So what you do is just click on the first frame here, and then just double click on this. And you're going to see it automatically writes this code for us, okay? And it made a layer called actions, which is how we would do it too. And then you can see this little A? That means that there's a script there, okay? Now there's no content on this, but it does have that A. All right. So the script itself has stop at this frame. This is a comment. It's just saying what it does. I honestly don't find it very useful, so I'm going to get rid of that just because it's extra garbage. It's always good to write comments, don't get me wrong, but this isn't really much of a thing. So it says this dot stop, okay? So this refers to whatever, so JavaScript is kind of weird. It has a special keyword called this. So if you've done any of the coding, you will probably not be familiar with this. I don't know, I can't think of any other languages that do this that I personally use. I'm sure there are other ones, but not that I'm currently using. But basically what this does is it represents the object that the script is attached to. Meaning that the script is underneath something, like this what we're writing is inside of something. Whatever it's inside of, that's what it represents. Okay, so in this case, this script is attached to our scene, our stage, basically. It's attached to what we're seeing here. So it's going to apply whatever functions inside of it to that. And so in that case, that's this timeline. That's literally where the script is currently residing. Okay, so that's what this is. And then and that's the object. And then dot and then stop. Okay, so dot notation just means that it's underneath, it's inside of, and then it's going to run this pre-built function, right? We can make our own functions. When it's inside of an object, it's called a method, but it's a function. And this pre-built one is called stop. So what it does is it literally just stops. And you could look this up inside of, go on the web and look up what stop does. But it's going to stop, and it doesn't require us to send it anything because we're literally just saying stop. We're not saying stop at any specific spot. We're saying just stop, and then we have to end it with a semicolon. Okay, so literally this is just saying stop, and you can see it's an action that's applied to frame 1. Okay, great. What we need to do is, actually, let's do the next thing, and then we'll come back to this one. Okay, the other thing we need to do is we need to apply a script to this guy. Okay, now in order for this to work, you actually have to select the button here. Now, what it needs to do is it needs to bind the code to this button. Okay, now you could have a problem with this. If you remember, this is a symbol, right? I can have multiple ones of these. So its name, next button, doesn't work because it won't know which thing it's supposed to bind to because there's multiple of them, right? So what you have to do is, the way the code works is that it targets whether you're trying to move things through the code or whether you're trying to bind an event listener or whatever kind of function you're trying to do, whatever method you're running or whatever variable is trying to apply. It applies it to, in order to target it, it has to have an instance name. And that's right up here, okay? So basically, it's a unique name that only this object will have. So if I have multiple buttons, right, because that's very common to use like one graphic for a bunch of them, I can target each one individually. Like, let's say I had this button. I want to have another button that says like previous, right? I could write previous on the one and then next on the other one. Like if they were just arrows and I didn't write next, I could use that button multiple times and have a different name for each one. So that way the bit of code only works on that one. Anyway, let's get to it. So we're just going to call this next button. Okay. And I like to use capitals so that I know it's an object. Okay, good. So we're going to next button, enter, boom. Okay, so that's the unique name that it's going to use. If you go to click on this and you don't put that in there, so watch, if I delete that, don't do this yet, I'm showing you. It's going to tell you, select name requires an instance name. It's going to tell you that it needs an instance name, okay? So just, but it's better, it will just make one up for you if you hit okay, but then you don't really know what it is. This way, I'm choosing it and I know exactly what this is, so when I see the code, I understand it. Okay, back to my coding thing. So make sure you have it selected, you change the name there, and we're still going to be in the timeline navigation. Now, what I wanted this to do is play. So if you look in here, do you see play? I don't. And if you click through the rest of them, you're not going to see them either, which is sort of kind of lame, a little disappointing. But what I can do is with this selected, I'm just going to click on this. The click to go to frame and play. It's pretty close to what I want. It's not exactly what I'm looking for, but it's pretty close. I'm again just going to get rid of all this comment stuff. And so what this does is it creates an event listener. An event listener basically is just something that listens for something to happen and will run a function when that event happens. In this case, it's listening for a click, okay? But this could easily, I don't know what the other ones are, honestly, by offhand, but it's probably, I'm sure hover is probably one. There's a bunch of them. You can look up if you want to look up the event listener, okay? So it says, okay, on this stage, there should be an object named next button. Remember, we just named it that. And then I want you to run a function on it, in it, every event, this add event listener. And that function is going to listen for a click. And then it's going to run this, function here. Okay. And it just automatically made up this name, and we could change this. Usually I would, but I don't want to waste the time. And so basically it's going to run this. So when you click, it's going to run this function. That's basically the lump sum of it. All right. So it says this, again, which means the stage, go to and play 5. So what that means is it's going to go to frame 5 and start playing. So it's literally going to skip to here and then start playing. Now, we could do this. I could say go to frame 2, right? Because it is frame 2, right? I think we start frame 1, yeah. So frame 2, go to frame 2 and play. That's totally fine. Or we could just do this. I'm going to take that out altogether and just write this dot play. All right. Do you know how I figured that out? It just made sense. And so I just typed that in there. And I'm like, well, they have this dot stop. This dot play makes sense. So I typed that in and it worked. So that's how I knew. But also, usually we end up having to do is usually have to go online and look up, like, how do you play? What's the way of playing? So the other thing would have worked as well, but I like this. I just feel like it's cleaner. Okay, so that's why we're going to use this. So this dot play. So literally it's going to be a play button. The other reason why we have to do it this way, actually, is that will work for the first time we play this. When I click next, right, it will go to frame 2 and then it will play. But the problem is when I get here and if I click on it, it's going to go to frame 2 and play. So you're going to be stuck in a loop. Okay, so we'd have to make another button with another function and another event listener, and then on that one have it that it goes to frame 16 and play, and then you end up doing a bunch of them. By just doing play, it's just going to start playing from whatever frame it's in, and so that actually runs a little bit better. So that's why we're doing it. All right, so this will work now. So if I go to test this, and I'm going to pause. So the things will all play themselves. Notice it's no longer sliding. When I click next, though, it's going to go all the way through because I didn't stop it. But now it functions. We just need to add that to the rest of it. Okay. So what we're going to do is pretty simple. I'm going to make sure I click on timeline here. And I'm going to go, I need it to stop at 1 second. So I'm just going to click on that frame and then go to my code here and just double click stop at this frame. And again, I'm just going to get rid of this. It's not actually necessary. You can leave it if you want. And that's just going to tell it to stop there. Then I'm going to go to the last one. Again, I need it to end at this frame. All right, so you can see I need it to end at this panel. And again, select that frame. Go to my code and stop at this frame. Okay, and again, I'm just going to go ahead and get rid of that. And I'm going to preview it again for you. And I'll pause it and show you in a second. And once loaded up, you can see I can click next, goes there, tells it to stop. Click next, goes there, and it has stopped. So basically all we literally did is just make a VCR, right? Play and stop. That's all it's doing. It's automatically stopping at frames through code. And then we have a button that we're clicking and that hits play. And that's literally how we're going to do our panels. What we're going to do in the next video is basically go into each panel and tell it to stop initially, and then you just hit play, and that's it. We got to do a little bit with it, but for the most part, that's the majority of it. So you can tell it's actually relatively simple. We didn't really have to type much code, if at all. But it's kind of a good intro. Hopefully, this is really the only. I mean, we might do a little bit of JavaScript later on, but we're going to be switching to ActionScript, and we're going to get more into it. So if you don't really understand the code, don't worry about it. You know, try to think about it. Try to logically look at it and be like, okay, that makes sense. But I'm not expecting you in any way to even really understand this at all. Okay, so don't panic about that. All right, so I'm going to end this video on the next one. Hopefully we'll be able to finish the whole thing.